child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, he will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome. Purport. The wisest man in the world is a devotee of the Lord. The sages are called wise men, and there are different types of wise men for different branches of knowledge. Unless, therefore, the king or the head of state is the wisest man, he cannot control all types of wise men in the state. In the line of royal succession in the family of Maharaj Yudhisthira, all the kings, without exception, were the wisest men of their times, and so also it is foretold about Maharaj Parikshit and his son Maharaj Janamejai, who was yet to be born. Such wise kings can become chastisers of upstarts and uprooters of Kali, or quarrelsome elements. As will be clear in the chapters ahead, Maharaj Parikshit wanted to kill the personified Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow, the emblem of peace and religion. The symptoms of Kali are wine, women, gambling, and slaughterhouses. Wise rulers of all states should take lessons from Maharaj Parikshit in how to maintain peace and morality by subduing the upstarts and quarrelsome people who indulge in wine, the illicit connection with women, gambling, and meat-eating supplied by regularly maintained slaughterhouses. In this age of Kali, regular license is issued for maintaining all of these different departments of quarrel. So how can they expect peace and morality in the state? The state fathers, therefore, must follow the principles of becoming wiser by devotion to the Lord, by chastising the breaker of discipline, and by uprooting the symptoms of quarrel as mentioned above. If we want blazing fire, we must use dry fuel. Blazing fire and moist fuel go ill together. Peace and morality can prosper only by the principles of Maharaj Parikshit and his followers. Rajashinam janaita shasta chotpatta gaminam nigrahita koleraesha bhuvo dharmasya karanat. This child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, he will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome. So, the position of Maharaj Parikshit is that of Rajashi. This term is one which is essential for the proper upkeep of the human society, especially one which will in any way take up Krishna consciousness. Unless the society is ruled by a Rajashi, it can never be peaceful. A Rajashi is a very powerful king, Raja, who is also as learned and as intelligent as a rishi, a great sage. In other words, a person who's very powerful, who can chastise his enemies, but he knows how to do it according to all of the principles of the Brahminical culture. In other words, he's not an ordinary person. He's a Rajashi, one who's a combination of a greatly powerful king and a greatly powerful sage. And such combinations are capable of ruling the world. These persons are so qualified that even the Brahminical class feels itself humbled. What's the example? Maharaj Parikshit, when he was on the banks of the Ganges, fasting until death, he came upon this community of sages who had all assembled just to hear the conversation between Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami. But at that time, nobody was quite aware of that yet. So Maharaj Parikshit asked them all, "Please instruct me, O great sages, on what is the duty of a man who is about to die." At that time, there was a big controversy amongst all these sages. Who was qualified to instruct Maharaj Parikshit? And none of them there felt themselves qualified. They thought, this person's so great. He's such a great learned personality that it requires a teacher who is on an equal level or greater than he. And they didn't see one there. So does that mean there was just some ordinary assembly of sages? No. Because even amongst these sages, there was Vyasadeva himself, Narada Muni was there, Asita, and the other rishis, great rishis who were all assembled in the forest for meditative process. Even Sutta Goswami, who we are receiving this Bhagavatam from, we see that none of them felt they were qualified enough to instruct Maharaj Parikshit. It wasn't until Shukadeva Goswami came upon the scene that everybody felt satisfied. Here's the person who can actually instruct Maharaj Parikshit. Here is that great personality who has full capacity to teach Maharaj Parikshit. That means that Maharaj Parikshit was so great that even amongst the great sages, they didn't feel themselves qualified to instruct him. So, we find that Shukadeva was so greatly powerful that it is said that only he really understood, besides Lord Shiva, only he really understood the Srimad Bhagavatam fully. So, this is a very interesting point. The great power and potency of Maharaj Parikshit. Certainly, we can then get some inkling of understanding of how great was Maharaj Yudhisthira, who was the son of religion personified. He, being the son of Yamaraj, who is also called Dharmaraj, who is the personified religious principle, was so perfect in all of his dealings that he never made a mistake in the sense of dealing with others according to religious principles. He was always perfectly following these principles, even if it meant sometimes causing trouble to himself. He would rather cause trouble to himself than to cause trouble to others. This was Maharaj Yudhisthira's great perfection. So we find that even amongst those who were Brahmanically inclined, that sometimes they may not have minded giving troubles to others for the sake of themselves. We find amongst the Brahminical class of man, there is often cursing going on. If somebody were to do something wrong, especially in relationship to themselves, they would curse them. Because not all Brahmins, of course, are devotees of the Lord. Just being a Brahmin doesn't mean you're all that qualified. No. It means perhaps you know something, and you got good qualities. But unless you're a devotee of the Lord, you're not freed from this anger or lust, which sometimes comes up, even if one is attempting to control it. But when one is a devotee of the Lord, he'll never curse anyone, even if others are cursing him, just like Maharaj Parikshit. Although he was cursed by the son of a Brahmana, Shringi, who was very much unqualified. This unqualified son of a Brahmana was not at all proper in his dealings. He was a young boy, and he saw that his father had been, by circumstance, a little bit insulted by Maharaj Parikshit. So he felt that this king didn't understand anything, and therefore it was his responsibility, this boy's responsibility, to curse Maharaj Parikshit, to die within 7 days. This was the end of the Brahminical community. When that action occurred, the Brahminical community was seen to have lost all good qualities. Therefore, in the age of Kali, the Brahmanas are actually in very bad shape. In fact, those who proclaim themselves Brahmanas nowadays are in fact the lowest amongst men, and are sometimes seen to be against the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, Brahminical class of man is responsible for, in the society, many persons trying to transfer the position of Krishna to Lord Shiva by misguiding or even completely rewriting the Shiva Purana to show that Lord Shiva is the Supreme. In this way, we find Brahmanas have caused a lot of trouble in this world. The Mayavadis, they are all of the Brahminical class, and they are all preaching totally improper philosophy. So we find that there are many problems with this Brahminical community. And it all started when Shringi improperly cursed Maharaj Parikshit. When he cursed Maharaj Parikshit like this, the end of the Brahminical community was marked. So, but still, although ordinary Brahmana cursed Maharaj Parikshit, and although Maharaj Parikshit could have easily, he was so powerful, he could have easily counter-cursed that boy and completely devastated him. Wiped out his whole curse, wiped out that boy. He could have done anything he wanted. Such a powerful personality certainly has all potencies to counter-curse and devastate those who give him trouble without even having to use his arrows. But he did not do so because he felt that this action of this boy was the will of the Supreme. And besides, we find that, for instance, the Pandavas never engaged in cursing, especially Maharaj Yudhisthira, never engaged in cursing others. This is not the business of the Vaishnavas, to curse others. Although, at the time of Ashwatthama's performing all kinds of heinous activities, some cursing was going on. But Maharaj Yudhisthira always was beyond this cursing business. And his great son, or his great grandson, Maharaj Parikshit, also was not going to start cursing others. After all of this activity which takes place in this world, all of this good and bad, which gives us so much trouble, gives us so much pain in different ways, is all a product of our own previous actions. We are simply suffering due to our previous activities. And there's really nothing more we can do about that, except try at the present moment to act in such a way as to free ourselves from all of the past sinful activities. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam tedvandamoha nirmukta bhajanti mam tudhabhuta. One must relieve himself of all improper activities which have taken place in the past. In the past, so many terrible activities have taken place. By us, we have done them, yes, because of lusty desires. So one must free himself from all of that by proper performance of prayaschita, atonement. Of course, simply by atoning for past previous activities, you do not wipe out the root cause of those activities. It is described just like if you chop the weed at the surface, still the root is there, and it will grow up again because the root is present. But yesham tvantakatam papam, all those former sinful activities, at least they should be somehow gotten rid of. And jananam punya karmanam, right now, one should act in a pious way, which means one won't plant new seeds of reactions which are to come in the future. So, how is the best way, what is the best way to free oneself from the horrible condition of being bound up by his past activities and present furtive desires? Simply by changing one's activities, one can certainly change an enormous amount of problem in his life. But really one cannot change his activities unless and until one is properly engaged in devotional service with determination. Because then only can one be freed from all the dualities of illusion which are keeping us from actually engaging properly in Krishna's service. Therefore it is stated, Te dvanda moha nirmukta, when you're freed from the duality of illusion, because illusion always brings duality. This and that, this opposite pair, this contradiction. In this world there are so many seeming contradictions, but they're all due to illusion. Otherwise, in the spiritual sky, there's no such thing as contradiction. This is all due to illusion. And if one is simply engaged in serving Krishna with a great vow, fixed vow, drita brata, then all of this duality becomes completely free, become completely free from all this duality. It becomes completely dissolved. When one is acting properly, then all the duality is dissolved. But sinful persons can't take up devotional service. So it's kind of a bind. If you're a sinful, impious person, you can't get freed from the duality of illusion, because you can't engage in devotional service to get free. And if you are a pious person, and still you don't engage in devotional service, you still can't get freed, because it's the age of Kali, and even pious persons are dragged into sinful activities. So you've got to give up these sinful activities and reach out for Krishna's service simultaneously. So one may say, but how is it possible to give up sinful activities unless I can reach out for Krishna's service and accept that? And that's the fact. Unless you go towards Krishna and accept devotional service of the Lord, one will never be freed from sinful activities. But, then one may say, what is the meaning of this verse? But, the answer is given. The meaning is, Dridha Brata. This is the key word in this verse. The most important point is that you can reach out for Krishna's devotional service without having all that much qualification. However, you can only engage in Krishna's devotional service with intense determination when one has been freed from all the reactions of past fruitive activities and is presently engaged only in very proper activities. So, even in the contaminated condition, one can serve Krishna. But in such a condition, he may not serve Krishna with the firm fixed vow which is required. Because sometimes devotees, they notice that there are some who do devotional service, but they're not very purified. There are others who do devotional service, but after some time go away. And there are still others who go on doing devotional service in a fixed up way all the time. And sometimes we question, why is this so? And we become a little confused as to how this is possible. But the answer is given in this explanation, that those who are simply engaged in devotional service, but have not yet come to the purified platform of acting properly, they may do devotional service for some time, but unless they come to the platform of acting properly and giving up all previous reactions for sinful activities, they will not be able to engage in Krishna's service with a firm, fixed-up vow. Therefore, when Cupid shoots his arrows, or when Maya presents herself in attractive forms, that person may leave immediately devotional service and go away. Or we may see somebody's just engaged in service in an improper fashion, and we may not understand how it is possible, but that person has not yet come to the point of purification, and neither has he yet come to the point of going away. He simply engaged in devotional service, and the question is there, what end he shall meet? Shall he become purified? Shall he become frustrated because of his inability to surrender to Krishna and go on in devotional service? So we find there are these two possibilities. It's like a suspense with each and every case. What shall be the destination of this soul? And there are all kinds of battles going on. One force is trying to bring that conditioned soul back to Godhead, led by the spiritual master in Krishna. Another force, Maya, is trying to drag that soul away from going back home, back to Godhead. And Maya has unlimited representatives in this material world. So the conditioned soul is pulled on both sides. He's pulled by the spiritual master. Come on, get out of Maya. And he's pulled by Maya. Come on, let's enjoy. And in this way, he's pulled in both directions all the time. And the conditioned soul feels very greatly disturbed by this. And so long as one is living in a sinful society, a society which has no proper structure or proper principles, then Maya's pulling may be stronger. Maya may have no obstacle to start pulling you in whatever direction Maya wants. But when one is acting under the direction of a Rajarshi, a great saintly king, then he makes arrangements in such a way that Maya cannot pull us away. Or at least it's very, very difficult. All of Maya's tricks, led by, as Prabhupada mentions in this purport, wine, women, gambling, and slaughterhouses. 1, 2, 3, and 4 sinful activities, which are Maya's tricks to drag away the conditioned souls. To drag them into in total intoxication, where they can become dull and forget all about their real business of life. To drag them simply into illicit sexual affairs, so that they start thinking that the pleasures of this sense gratification is the sole and whole goal of life. To make them think that they can't live without drinking the blood of slaughtered animals. And to engage them in wasting away their hard-earned money in gambling affairs. Such kinds of ideas are Maya's arrows to shoot the conditioned soul who's trying to become Krishna conscious. And just to make sure that others don't make the mistake of trying to become Krishna conscious, Maya keeps them filled with arrows of lusty desires, so that they never even think of surrendering to Krishna or becoming Krishna's pure devotee. They wouldn't even consider it, not in the slightest. So we find that in human society, unless there is such a saintly personality who can curb the influence of Maya, Maya runs rampant over the society. Therefore, it is required that somebody put his foot down and say, no slaughterhouses here. In this kingdom, there will be no killing of animals. At least not in an organized fashion. In this kingdom, there will be no gambling houses. In this kingdom, there will be no brothels. In this kingdom, there will be no bars, clubs, cabarets. There will be no liquor shops. These things shall not exist in this kingdom. This kind of strict control is very unpopular. If this were to happen, people would just flip out like anything. Just like in the times in America when they had this prohibition. They saw that the society was agitated in all kinds of ways. And that it didn't stop very much, but it just drove it underground, where it thrived in underground economies. And they saw the whole thing with the mafia and everything was becoming so big, it threatened the whole stability of the society. So they had to surrender it back again, especially since all of the administrators of state were all drunkards themselves. So we find that without actually establishing proper moral principles, you can't possibly establish peace in society. But unless you have a purified society, you can't possibly establish moral principles, because people have the taste for sinful activities. Just like a tiger. He doesn't have a taste for human beings. He doesn't know that human beings taste good. It doesn't disturb him to see a human being. He doesn't become lusty. But sometimes, occasionally, the tiger meets a person who attacks him somehow. So, for instance, when a person gets afraid, he throws a rock at a tiger, or he tries to hit him with a stick if he sees no way to protect himself and he's paranoid. At that time, the tiger, to defend himself, not knowing, of course, that he doesn't have to defend himself against this person, but at that time jumps on the person and kills him, or rips him open. At that time, he tastes the flesh of a person. And at that time he realizes, ooh, he tastes very good. And from that point on, the tigers start hunting down persons, because they see this person tastes better than these buffaloes and these deers. And at that time, the tiger becomes known as a man-eater and starts chasing down people. And they can't stop that. They don't stop that. They just keep doing it because they've got the taste. Similarly, when you've got the taste for illicit activities, one doesn't want to stop that because he's full of lusty desires. However, there is one way to stop that. In India, the way they're stopping now the tigers, because the tigers are eating people like anything nowadays. Believe it or not. Tigers are multiplying like anything and eating people like everything. So, they have a new method. They make a doll of a man, but it's an electric doll. And when the tiger jumps on the man to eat him, that doll man makes such an electric shock that the tiger is thrown back. And if he's stupid enough to do it again, he gets another shock which jolts him like anything. Doesn't kill him, but just jolts him like anything. And then he runs away like anything and never eats men again. Because he thinks, these people are shocking. So sometimes Maya makes a trick like that to shock us a little bit. Because Maya is also Krishna's servant, and Krishna, directing Maya in that way, will make it so that one may even be engaged in intoxication, but then meet a very shocking thing because of that. Sometimes we find those who take these hallucinogenic drugs sometimes have an experience which scares them to death, and therefore they give it up and don't ever take it again. That's Krishna's mercy, is it not? Sometimes one is engaged in illicit sex life and has such a horrible experience that he wishes to give it up. It is not that always these things are very pleasurable. Sometimes, by Krishna's extraordinary grace, one suffers, and therefore, at that time, he gives up, at least for some time, these sinful activities. But to get such mercy like that, very difficult. Extremely difficult. Because most persons have too much desire to enjoy this material world. They're not ready to give up all these things, even if it's a shocking experience. Speaking of shocks, there's the old example of the monkey and the sweets and the electric shocks. In these tests, they put some sweet behind an electric field, so the monkey has to reach through this field in order to get the sweet. And they keep increasing the shock every time the monkey does it. So the monkey reaches, tastes the sweet, very good, no shock. So he thinks sweet is good. So now the scientists, being rascals, raise the voltage, and he gets a little shock, but he doesn't care. He thinks the sweet's more important. And they keep raising the voltage, raising the voltage, raising the voltage. Until a point when that monkey gets just completely knocked out when he's reaching for the sweet. But he still just brings his arm back at the end and he's more attached to eating the sweet than to protect his own body. We see that amongst all kinds of species of life. When the dogs in Vrindavan are having sex, generally it's a fight with 10 or 12 other dogs in order to have sex. Because there's only one female for every 10 males, for some extraordinary reason. And at that time, when that dog finally wins the battle and starts to have sex with the female dogs, the other dogs, they don't just say, oh, okay, may the best dog win, and they go away and peace. No, not at all. They start biting that dog with big teeth. They fiercely bite him and claw him and rip at him. They try to pull him by the tail to drag him away. He's bleeding like anything, ripped open on all sides. But he will not stop having sex with the she-dog. He thinks it's worth it, whatever pain there is, whatever suffering there is. The same thing is going on, even amongst the human beings. The asses are a good example too. The male ass comes to the she-ass for sex, and the she-ass, just to train up that male ass, who's the boss, starts kicking him in the mouth, kicking him in the face, again and again. And he just bam, bam, bam. Yeah. And when he's sufficiently kicked, and he's really in bad shape, totally surrendered, then the female ass says, okay, now you can have sex. In some species of life, the female says, all right, you can have sex, but I will kill you right afterwards. and certain spiders. They have sex with the female of their species, and immediately the female kills them. They're finished. Scorpions are like that. Isn't it wonderful? Just in order to enjoy in this material world, one's ready to face death. But he doesn't care. After all, those persons who are engaged in various forms of intoxication know by now that these things kill you. Everybody knows that if you take heroin, you have to keep increasing the dose in order to feel anything. And then at one point, it kills you. All these heroin addicts, they die sooner or later. It's a terrible thing. Even we have heard that in Oslo, you can walk into the public bathroom and see somebody dead, laying there with a needle in his arm. One devotee saw that, isn't it? Was that you? Yeah. So it's amazing. Everybody knows this. But still they do it anyway. Right. Why? No brain, that's why. Lusty desire. Sufficiently experienced, one still cannot see. Everybody knows that sense gratification ultimately gives trouble. But still, they don't want to see it. It's a question of not desiring, not wanting to see. They make themselves blind to the truth because they want to be deluded. Just like when everybody goes to a show. We all know it's just a big show. It doesn't have any meaning. Or in the battlefield on the movies. You know that all these men being killed here, it's all bogus. It's just ketchup and things like that. And then after they get up, they wipe off all the red stuff and walk away. Yeah. Everybody knows it's all bogus. But still, you surrender your mind to it when you walk into that building. You say, now I'm going to believe everything I see. And if they want me to cry, I will cry. If they want me to laugh, I will laugh. I surrender completely to this illusion. Please entertain me. Please entertain me. This is the material world. It's like we have experience of suffering in this material world, but still we surrender to it completely, thinking that if we just become completely surrendered to Maya, then we'll really enjoy. So this material world is based on these principles, and the whole human society is based on these principles of complete surrender to Maya. But these things are causing destruction in the human society. Therefore, it is required that there be a great saintly personality who's very powerful, who will rule the world in order to keep it from becoming completely insane. Now it's already insane, so there's no question of bringing it back to some sane position. It's already completely insane. To make some proper condition will be very, very difficult. But it is absolutely required that one accept the rulership of a great personality. But where are those great personalities? We don't see them anywhere. Therefore, Prabhupada was very much interested in training them up. Not even directly. He wanted to train up a great class of Brahmanically minded men who will be able to present to those who have the power this transcendental knowledge, so that there's a possibility in the future of developing some Rajarshi. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement has a great mission to try and develop some Rajarshi. After all of the great religions of the world became established because some very powerful king became the protector of that religion and expanded it. Buddhism was nothing until Emperor Ashoka embraced it. And Christianity was nothing until Constantine embraced it. Each of the religions, you can go through the histories. I'm not very expert at this. You can go through the different histories of the religions. You will find, ultimately, that because a great king took it up, therefore it became established throughout the world. So, similarly, our business is to actually somehow bring this Krishna consciousness to the great personality and somehow bring them to the point of understanding what is their original duty of life. So it may be a little difficult, because after all, it's so very hard to find great personalities to give Krishna consciousness to, since there aren't any. But at least we can give to those who are in the positions of great personalities Krishna consciousness. Yeah. But of course it's very difficult to meet such persons. And after all, they are elected by people. And therefore, now we have the job of giving to all of the people Krishna consciousness, so that they'll come to the point of electing somebody who's also Krishna conscious, which means there's a possibility of establishing Krishna consciousness in the human society. So therefore we are distributing books to each and every single person, because they're so much attached to this democratic electoral process, that when they finally a little bit become Krishna conscious, then maybe they'll be interested in electing somebody who's got some moral principles. Yeah. This is our hidden secret goal, to make people at least somewhat Krishna conscious, so that they'll understand that they don't want to be ruled by another fool and rascal like themselves. They want to be ruled by somebody who's greater than they are, someone who's actually more spiritually minded and powerful. In this way, the whole society will change. Therefore, this mission of preaching, this book distribution mission, is the topmost important activity there is in the whole Krishna consciousness movement. And everything should just go on to support that mission. So, we are requesting everyone to take it up with great enthusiasm, casting aside one's own personal problems just for a moment. That moment, of course, may last for 10, 20, 30 years. That's all right. But just for a moment. Because in eternity, that's a moment. Cast aside one's own problematic existence or desires and take up this Krishna conscious mission and make the perfection of life. That is our desire. That is the desire of Srila Prabhupada and the desire of Krishna. Therefore, kindly please take this up with great enthusiasm and let's accomplish something in this world. All right, Hare Krishna.